right, guys, happy Wednesday and welcome back to the Nursing Investigation. I'm already pissed. If that doesn't set the scene for today, I don't know what is, because the alarms are definitely going off in my head. I just found out that my predictor exam scores did not mean that I was going to fail the Nclex. It actually meant the opposite. So let's get right into it. Welcome back. Let's talk about the hot topic, right? When a nursing school gives you 4 chances to pass a predictor exam and you don't, does that make me look like the bad guy? Does that make me look like I'm incapable of taking the Nclex and I didn't pick anything up from nursing school? I will not be a good nurse nor a competent one. Are we all capable of getting an A+? No, and that's okay. I've never been into a patient's room or bedside and a patient has asked me, did you get an A+ on every exam? In this video, I'm going to explain how just one exit exam withdrew my graduation from me. Forget about the other 3. It all started with that one. To me, in my opinion, 1 equals 4. It doesn't matter how many times I took it, I was doomed from the beginning, and that's just how I feel. In this video, I'm going to explain how a single exit exam or predictor test determined whether my entire nursing education even counted and why I'm suing now. When I started researching, I discovered something troubling about predictor exams in nursing school. They're designed to estimate Nclex success probability. Many students who score below a school's benchmark still go on to pass the Nclex, and none of these predictor exams are 100% accurate. They could have questions that are out of your scope. They could have questions that touch on topics you never even discussed in nursing school. They could have different tiers of who's getting which kind of questions. They can have different versions. So I may take a version, the girl to the left of me may not. Some programs aim nearly for 100% first-time pass rate of their Nclex. So this means preventing certain students from ever testing. This Nclex predictor exam has nothing to do with my competency. It has everything to do with their passing rate for those first-time Nclex test takers. Now, this is not to say a school is bad for using exit exams, but it should be regulated and it should be done with both the student and the school in mind. I do not mind schools using exit exams as a tool. What I do mind, hypothetically speaking, generally, in my opinion, is when you use exit exams to hide certain students from the accreditation bureau. So when a couple students go and take that Nclex and they all pass, it looks like you're doing your job, when in all actuality, you didn't let 20 girls take it, hypothetically speaking. Here's what I wasn't clearly told. Which specific predictor exam I would be taking. Could you imagine walking into a room after you've completed your nursing education just to find out what test you would be taking in that moment, never receiving a study guide, never having an actual prep class to actually guide you on how to take an exam like this? It's not like your average final or your average test in nursing school. This will be the hardest test you will ever take in your life, that even a lot of students say is harder than the Nclex. With the test anxiety of knowing this is pass or fail, if you do not pass this test, you will not be getting your Nclex. Especially for a student like myself that walked into that school with about a 2.0 GPA and left with the same GPA. They knew who I was walking into that school. They knew who I was throughout that school. I am only capable of what I'm capable of. And if you didn't want me to be a part of your program and you wanted A+ students, you shouldn't have accepted me, is my opinion. Now, Also, which makes this a little more tricky, on top of all that, I didn't know the test would be timed. Put you under the max amount of pressure to make sure on your worst day, you can still pass that Nclex the first time. So when I'm choosing my school and they're telling me, oh, we have a 98% Nclex pass rate, hypothetically speaking, no. You have a 98% Nclex pass rate because only 5 girls took the exam out of a classroom full of 30, let's say, hypothetically speaking. I didn't know there would be no structured study guide. You know what I got to prepare for my exit exams? A trial on UWorld. A trial on UWorld. That's another key piece of the puzzle. Why was I never allowed to know my scores after I took my test? Why was a teacher only allowed to relay them to me? I was not offered meaningful remediation. That is the truth. I was not offered meaningful remediation. And I have already proved that to you, but I will prove it again in the email that I sent at that time. Don't trust Clarissa now, trust Clarissa of the past. I was getting multiple attempts at essentially the same high stakes barrier. If I didn't pass the first time with flying colors, why would I pass the second, third, or fourth? In my opinion, it's to make me look bad. It's to make them look like, well, we gave her multiple chances. In my opinion, this is what it looks like. This is what my experience was. It's not like I barely was short on the first exam. All right, we'll give it to her again. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt. No, like I was not passing the second, third, or fourth time. That is what it shows. And you're requesting I need a 900? I just showed you I got a 700 and a 703. How am I jumping to a 900? It's not possible. I don't appreciate, in my opinion, what it feels like being set up to fail. 4 chances, same history, same outcome. I don't know which test I'm taking. I don't know how to study for it. Nobody ever sat down and told me, this is how you answer a question. This is the psychology behind it, because A, B, C, and D may all be right, but which one's the safest answer? Which one are you gonna do first? Which one's your job and not the doctor's job? You know what I'm saying? That's the answer you're gonna choose. I just needed test education, how to be the best test taker. Obviously the knowledge is here, or I would have got 100 out of 900. You know what I'm saying? But because I was almost there, I was slightly missing something, and my scores were equal to each other almost to the T every single time. It shows the knowledge is there, and I didn't know that until today. I did have the knowledge. I do have the knowledge. What I didn't have is the right preparation, and that is not solely my responsibility. When a nursing school allows you to complete an entire program but blocks you at the very end, that's just not academic policy. It's life altering. That is my sweat. That is my work. That is my time away from my kids. And if that's not personal, I don't know what is. Thank you to the great Erin Brockovich. I'm also going to break down these nursing predictor exams, what they really mean, exit exam policies, Nclex eligibility issues, and why I believe this system deserves scrutiny at the very minimum. Nobody has ever talked about this before, because when you talk to people who have taken exit exams, who have heard about this, or have been through it, everybody's like, oh, well, there's nothing you can do. It's in the policy, and that's just how it is. You know what? It takes a loud, annoying woman to sometimes stand up and say, this isn't right, and we deserve better, and that's exactly what I'm doing. You think changes were made in the world by people just sitting back and say, well, they said it's fine and I should just believe them. No, you need to fight sometimes. People like me, we need to fight for everything we have in life. And this is one of those moments. If you're a nursing student facing an exit exam, no, you are not alone. If you're a student who's failed an exit exam and that's preventing you solely from taking your Nclex, I share my story with you. I cannot tell you what to do because I'm in active litigation, but I can tell you my experience and what I'm doing. I'm going to show you now the curriculum plan and clock hours of what was presented to me Before I even enrolled, this is what I was under the impression of, this is what was given to me, this is what I needed to pass the program. When this conflicts with the contract I signed, that is a problem to me. Here's all my courses: human anatomy, physiology, fundamentals, pharmacology, adult nursing, mental health, maternal and peds, adult nursing 2. You have your clinical hours, you have your total hours. This is what I needed to graduate that program. Nonetheless, I will show you again on my program information sheet, the first page of the contract, where I was guided to look how much I'd be paying and what I needed to complete the program. That coincides with what I was given at the beginning. Nothing including about the exit exams or how long the program would actually take. That is conflicting information. Let me show you something real quick. Let's go back to my transcript. Take a look at my transcript. Does it match those, does my transcript match this curriculum plan? Well, I see fundamentals, I see human anatomy and physiology, I see adult nursing, I see pharmacology, I see mental health, I see maternal health, and I see adult nursing too. Did I not complete everything I was told I would need to for my transcript? Yeah, I did. So why at the bottom does it say degree received, withdrawal, date confirmed, withdrawal, major nursing? These are my two most biggest problems. Without that date and the degree received, I can do nothing with this to be a nurse. This is no good to me. I didn't go to school to learn how to do first aid. I went to school to get a job. There's nothing I can do with this. Let me show you something else. A kind, sweet girl sent me her transcript. I'm going to redact some information to protect her privacy, but take a look at this. Her transcript in comparison to mine. This is a student who was able to take her Nclex. Everything is equal until we get to the bottom. Diploma. I took out her date for privacy purposes, to protect her privacy, of course, but it does have a conferral date on there. I can confirm I did see that. So why is this? Because of that predictor exam. That predictor exam only took that degree and conferral date away from me. So she goes on to send me something further. This white piece at the bottom of her transcript, it goes over the grading system and what it looks like. Now remember, next to my degree and my conferral date, it says withdrawn. Well, let's go down here and see, what does withdrawn actually mean? WD, withdrawal. A grade of WD is assigned to courses where a student is withdrawn and no final grade was determined. This grade has no impact on a student's cumulative GPA. Well, none of my courses have been withdrawn on my transcript, so why do I have a degree that was withdrawn? That's interesting. It says financial hold. There is no FH, so I didn't have a financial hold. There is no I for something that has been incomplete. There is no U for unsatisfactory or failure. There is no WC for withdrawn for conduct. There is no WF for withdrawn for failing. There is nothing on here that says I should not have my diploma on here. If you don't want me to walk with my class and technically graduate and walk across that stage, take it. If that helps you sleep at night, keep it. So let's get back to the big question in the room. Now that we've confirmed Clarissa paid her dues, she didn't have any misconduct, there could be no other reason keeping Clarissa from her degree. Let's go back to the 4 failed exit exams. I'm not scared to face it. Trust me, that was the, oh my gosh, hardest time of my life. I literally tried to myself. Literally. Like, that is how depressed I was because of this. I literally went crazy because I could not believe I was living this experience. I was like, what is happening? I don't understand what's going on. This cannot be. I would have much rather been thrown out in the first course and went to another school and only invested a little bit of time than years and so much time and so much money just to be told at the end, you can't take your Nclex based off of a technicality. Huh? As you are aware, you received the following scores on the progression exams. The first exam I took was the HESI, second one ATI, third exam NLN, fourth exam HESI again, probably a different version. Can you imagine your school telling you, hey, we're gonna give you any vendor exam we want, and we're not gonna tell you which one you're taking. You won't know until you walk into that classroom. You also won't know what the passing score is, because when I got into that classroom, nobody ever confirmed it with me. And on top of that, did I say timed? Yeah, that one pisses me off. And on top of that, this is pass or fail. If you don't pass this, essentially your whole nursing education will be erased. Whoa, that is what I'm saying. I feel like I was put in such a high stakes, unbearable situation that it could have only given me the worst test anxiety to influence my environment negatively. And I don't think that's right. That's just my opinion. So you know what I found out this morning? I was like, what do these scores even mean? Because I can't trust when the school told me in the contract, if I don't meet their benchmark, that means I'm not ready to be a nurse, more or less. I didn't develop the skills or the competency necessary, which I'll show you in the contract. That's not true. Let's go back. First, let's take ATI for an example. I got a 62 on the ATI. I was like, what does a 62 even mean? Does that mean like I failed horribly and that means like I don't have a chance of passing the Nclex? Am I really that bad? Well, let's take a look. I found an ATI comprehensive predictor categories chart, which shows you the scoring intervals and expectations. I got a 62. So my probability of passing was a 75% to a 79%. That was my probability of passing the Nclex. Do you know what my school wanted? Take a guess. Take a guess of where I needed to be for them to feel like I could take my Nclex. One step further. Let's look at the HESI scores. I had a 703 and a 700. Let's look at it a different way. Let's go by statistics. What does that score mean? If a student gets a 700 to a 799 on a HESI exams, statistically, did students end up passing their Nclex? 76% of those students passed their Nclex. Only 23% did not the first time around. Hold up, now I'm pissed. You're telling me I was convinced I don't have the competency, I wasn't ready to take my Nclex, and you took that away from me because yet again, guess what my school wanted from me to be able to sit for that Nclex? Based off of this grade right here, they wanted me to have about a 900 to take my Nclex, because you know what that means? I almost had 100% chance of passing that Nclex. That 76% wasn't good enough for them. I could understand if my scores were like, 49% or like even a 40%, because I feel like if you have a 50-50 chance, that's still a chance. Like, I still feel like you can do it. If you pass nursing school, you could pass that Nclex. I am just astounded. I didn't know that. Again, like you guys, when I presented this investigation to you guys, I knew people were going to automatically trust the school, because why not? Why would a school lie to you? Why would a school, sue a student? Why would a school, want to keep you back? They should want alumni, right? They should want happy alumni. They should want a single mom who completed nursing school, went on to take her Nclex. What a powerful story with everything I've been through. What a powerful story that would be to work together and not against each other for the greater good, right? Wouldn't you want more students who saw the hope and everything I've been through and that I could do it, they could too? Because if I could do it, anybody could do it. Out of all the trials and tribulations I faced, Wouldn't that be better than suing a student and everything coming out like this when it doesn't even have to? We could have just handled this privately, in a sense, like just talking as two normal human beings and figuring this out. Am I a poor education student? Probably. Yeah. Like, I'm just an average student. Like, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody. I think I need more time. I need one-on-one teaching. I need an IEP. Like, I need certain things to learn, and that's okay. Maybe I can't. Maybe that is just who I am academically at that time in life. I didn't have parents taking care of me, paying for a home for me, setting me up for college, taking care of finances. I was working a full-time job and raising a child on my own, going home to a mother who was dying, right after domestic violence, being stabbed by my daughter's father, literally pouring on welfare. And you're telling me that I need to get an A and do all that? You do it then. If it's so easy, you go through all of that and you do it the way I did it. Nothing can change. You walk in my shoes in my life and you do it. With this brain. With an IEP needed brain. You do it. I didn't have an IEP. I did this all myself. So it also makes me ask the question, what type of person keeps an education from a poor single mother on welfare that fought for years to be able to save up enough to go to school to pay for what the grants, the financial aid wouldn't cover, because she was stabbed by her daughter's father after birth, who then went to prison only a couple days postpartum, mind you, gets through that, starts working full time, puts her kid in daycare from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., then has to have her family members pick her daughter up, and maybe we'll get home in time to put her to bed if she's lucky for years. What kind of person sues a mother who goes to school to try and better her life to get off of welfare after going through all that and says your education does not matter because we don't think you will pass your Nclex the first time? And when I'm looking here at what those scores really mean, and I just found this out today, y'all, this doesn't mean I wasn't competent. This doesn't mean I didn't retain the material like I was led to believe. This doesn't even mean I wasn't going to pass the Nclex the first time. Look at this. Statistically, I had a 76% chance, like the rest of the students who got a 700 on their HESI and still passed the Nclex the first time. Or I got a 62 on my ATI, and this means I still had a 75 to a 79% probability of passing the Nclex the first time, and you withheld that opportunity from me because I did not have the best probability of passing. That was not relayed to me like that. That was not relayed to me like that. After we choose not to speak to her privately about this matter and find out a great solution for both of us so we can all move on with our lives, we're then going to sue her for speaking up about her story and call it defamation. And not only that, but then when she gets into court, we're going to withdraw our claims because we just found out that she's going to file back. She can do it all herself. We'll make her start at the beginning. We're not going to make this easier for her. So that's exactly what I did. I started my own claim. I filed against them. I went to court. And you know what they did? They keep filing to have my case dismissed, to have my case heard somewhere else, to have the appellate court review. I have been through so many things with them. So when you say, why has it taken this long? Why are you just speaking up now? You do not know how the court system works. And I'm so glad, just like Piper said, I am so glad you have your freedom of speech. I was doing better with this, but just seeing that I was made to believe like I didn't have what it took to be a nurse, and seeing, the statistics of girls that fail these exit exams or don't take them at all and pass the Nclex the first time, and that doesn't even matter. In the big picture, I was watching this TikToker, I think his name is Nick. It's like Nick, RNBSN, I don't know. And he made a video yesterday and he was like, no patient ever asked me how many times I took my Nclex. No patient ever asked me if I was like, you know, on honor roll or things like that. And I was just like, that's so true. In the real world, nobody cares about that. Of course, you'll get some hating ass comments here and there saying, oh, well, I wouldn't want you anyway. Like people who are just miserable, who are just bored, you know. But in reality, like majority of people, nobody's walking into a clinic or a hospital or a doctor's office saying, are you the best nurse in the world? I need the best nurse. Literally, I pick up the phone at work and they just start talking. And then you guys also started sending me some things I also didn't think about. They sent me a screenshot that says, not telling a nursing student whether they are taking HESI or ATI is generally considered unfair and poor academic practice. While both tests aim to predict and Nclex assess, they have different question styles and review sources. This is true. You can sit here and say, exit exams are broad, just like the Nclex. The Nclex is regulated by a governing body. These exit exams, these predictor exams, are not. The transparency wasn't there in my experience. ATI and HESI, they do have distinct proprietary review materials. It's right on their website. Knowing which exam I was taking would have helped me to study. But in my opinion, I feel like the school withheld that information to put you in such a high stakes, high pressure, bad day situation to make sure on your worst day you could pass that Nclex. So I typed into the Google AI, yes, my school told me they could give me any predictor exam and didn't tell me until I walked into the room which test I was taking. It says, this practice is considered highly irregular and contradicts established educational best practices for nursing programs. These standardized exams are designed to be predictive, and their effectiveness relies on students having the correct preparation materials. So then I go back to the screenshot she sent me, and I was like, okay, she might be onto something. Why is this not considered fair? Lack of informed preparation. NLN themselves, one of the tests, one of the exit exams they used as a predictor exam, the NLN themselves state students should be notified as early as possible about the nature and content of the exam, which I wasn't. So not only are you using these predictor exams, but you're not using them in the way the maker has designed them to be used, in my opinion. Procedural due process. Schools have a responsibility to provide timely and specific notice of graduation requirements. If the surprise nature of the exam wasn't clearly stated in the handbook or syllabus, it may be a violation of the school's implied contract with you. This is what it looks like to me. A nursing school, Jersey College of Nursing, to me, looks like, after my experience, was trying to protect their accreditation in the way the accreditation bureau did not want them to. How does that make sense? This creates a safety margin. If you can pass a harder fixed exam, the school is confident you will pass the adaptive Nclex even on a bad day. That's exactly what I was saying. That's how I interpreted it too. So when you're taking your Nclex, every question is based off of like your last answer. And once you get like, if you need the lowest level of answers, it's fine as long as you stay there, but you can't go minimum of that baseline. They cannot give you any easier questions and still hand you your license. That's fair, but they have tiers, right? The harder the questions you get right, the less questions you'll have to take. If you need easier questions, maybe you'll walk out taking 150 questions. Both are fine. That makes sense. That's also governed by the Board of Nursing. That is regulated. All these questions are regulated. When you give somebody a predictor exam and you give them the hardest questions they'll ever take in their life, no exceptions, times, you can't study for this, it's going to be a surprise, it's pass or fail. Imagine what that could do to somebody's mental state like it did to mine. So this is what I feel like. I feel like my case and my presentation is highly questionable from an educational standpoint. And I feel like it stands out, and it deserves some scrutiny. It deserves a microscope. We have 4 exit exams. That's already atypical, right? Most programs let you just take it twice, right? Let's say the benchmark was a 900 and I got an 890. That makes sense to let me take it again because I can probably do it if I got another question or 2 right. You know what I'm saying? But to give me 4 exit exams, knowing my scores more than likely weren't going to reach that benchmark, just to, in my opinion, make me look not credible, and to make it look like you gave me more chances than you did, and to make it look like my fault. I just feel like it makes it look like I was the problem, and that's just how I feel through my experience. It makes it look like I was given chances that I wasn't really given. Because if I did, there was no way from a score of a 700 I was getting to a 900. There's just no way. The different exams, on top of different versions they could offer to different students. So you're telling me the girl next to me could have an easier test, or the girl in the other room, she could have a different test and pass? How is that fair? I've never heard of a school giving so many different students different set of tests. How is that fair? And how is that fair that so many different students could take different tests and have different outcomes, and like every student should be taking the same test? So you're telling me somebody could have had it easier than I could, and that's why they passed? And I'm not even going to get into that, because I know firsthand for a fact, living through it and seeing it and hearing about it in the hallways, I know why girls passed. I know why at least half those girls passed. A lot, like my class started with like a group of 30 students, and I promised you about a handful only made it out. That's my experience. That's what I saw. And the girls that made it out are girls who went to nursing school before, who have been in the medical field for years. They were older, much older. They've been doing this their entire lives, or they were like really young girls who had support through their education, so they could only focus on this. But like they were just out of high school type thing, you know? So I don't know. And I think it undermines the comparability. It undermines saying, well, this student's ready, but this one's not, because this one took ATI version 2 and this one took HESI version 1, and she failed and she passed, so she's ready to go. What? What if the roles were reversed? Was I just dealt a bad hand? On top of not knowing which exam you'll take until you walk in, I don't think that's about testing knowledge. That's testing uncertainty tolerance. That's not a nursing competency, FYI. Not including study materials. Why am I practicing UWorld questions as study material, let alone a trial of UWorld questions? If an exam is so mandatory and it's so high stakes, standard practice is to provide aligned preparatory material or clearly identified required resources up front. If you are taking the test of your life and somebody says, you can't prepare because hypothetically speaking, we want to prevent cheating. AKA, we want to prevent people from passing, hypothetically speaking. You know, because that's less risk for us, hypothetically speaking. What? The timed exams. I didn't know this was gonna be timed. What? So now I gotta rush? Timing can be appropriate because the Nclex is essentially timed itself, but when you combine it with everything I've explained above, I think it shifts from assessment to becoming a barrier. And I think that's what makes my situation different. And then remember, they also didn't tell me when I walked in which score I needed. So I didn't even have a baseline. I'm just winging the entire thing. I think the core issue is like exit exams are supposed to be predictive tools, not eliminative ones. especially for those who have completed nursing school, their purpose typically should be to identify weak areas, guide remediation, and improve Nclex readiness for the student and for the school. That sounds fair. It just makes no sense to me. When an exit exam replaces graduation, licensure eligibility, lacks transparency, lacks standardized prep, and varies exam to exam from person to person, I feel like it stops functioning as a predictor exam and starts functioning as a filter. In my opinion, it feels like a replacement. It feels like the school took least risk as possible. That is my opinion, that is my feeling, that is my experience. What makes it especially concerning on top of all that, in education, especially in healthcare, mind you, high stakes decisions require advance notice, consistent metrics across the board to every student, clear remediation pathways, and proportional consequences. So the fact that a student next to me could have took a different exam, and she also could have got an 890, right? And because I got a 700, she was allowed to remediate and take it 2 more times. I've even heard girls of them letting go. But because I scored much lower, I had to repeat the program? What? Why are the rules not the same for everybody? When it's so inconsistent, how can the program remain, how can the program keep its core integrity if it's inconsistent? Because then you get a student like me who gets dealt a bad hand, and then what? This happens. When the consequence is repeating the program, the process has to be especially tight. What I'm describing is not too tight at all. I think there's an important nuance, and I don't want to gaslight myself either. I'm not saying that every school that uses exit exams is wrong. No student ever fails fairly, or my program was acting in bad faith. I'm not saying any of this. What I think it means is the structure that I was subject to was legitimately debatable and is up for discussion, and we need to figure out a solution. Because I've already tried to handle this privately and just talk human to human, right? I was okay with that. Trust me, if I'm going to court, I gave somebody numerous chances to figure something out, and it's affected my life, and it has damaged me in multiple ways that are irreparable. I think, I see where the school's coming from in the sense of not wanting to lose their accreditation. I'm not saying they have to. I wouldn't want them to, because that wouldn't be good for me either, right? But to say your journey is over, if you're going to give me 4 attempts, why not make it 8? Why not make it 12? Why not I keep taking it until I pass it? Like, to just say you can never be a nurse, like, that just sounds ludicrous. Create the right, testing courses to prep you appropriately. Tell students which tests they're taking. Like, to say we can't do that, hypothetically speaking, because we want to prevent cheating. You can't have your cake and eat it too. For that 1 or 2, and then, you know what? Actually, in bringing that up, that doesn't stop cheating. People like me who follow the rules get put in situations like this. Stop putting students like me in situations like this, and people won't cheat. That is what people look at me and see. Somebody who followed the rules, somebody who did everything they were told, and lose the opportunity at their nursing license. Because integrity matters. And when you don't have integrity, people will do what they need to do to pass. So you're saying you don't want people to cheat, but they're seeing people like me come out in the end of nursing school. What do you think they're going to do? Integrity matters. Even when the outcomes are negative, people can accept them and process them better when it's clear and it's fair. When the process is opaque and shifting, I think it creates distress for everybody. But I think that alone tells me something. I think I'm not wrong for questioning it. I think I'm not weak for being affected by it. I don't think, I'm dragging it out by continuing this process of litigation. And I don't think I'm reckless for wanting clarity. I think when other people bring to me what their other schools did that mine didn't, like they knew which test they were taking. They were very clear on the first day what an exit exam actually was. They don't use it as a gatekeeper, or they use it as like a weighted portion of a course grade. They offered multiple attempts of the same test, or, and if you didn't pass it by that point, they just let you go. They used it as a tool for education to say, hey, you need to focus on these areas before you take your Nclex. Everyone took the same test. Like, they had weeks of study just to learn how to take a high stakes exam. I didn't get that experience with my school. And I just went on like a random college, right? Here's FSU. I went on FSU's College of Nursing page to see what they do for their students. And it's very clear. You're going to take an Nclex and HESI study resources class. This is going to be an Nclex 12-week study plan. They're giving their students 12 weeks of guided study to prepare for that Nclex by going through this HESI study resource. 12 weeks to prepare for one test. And you're telling me I need to go in there blind as a bat with not one study program? Without one study guide for a HESI specifically? Or you're telling me I can give you any exit exam, so now go out there and buy everything you want because it's not included. I'm sorry, college is supposed to include everything in tuition that you'll need to pass. As far as study material goes. And then, like, down at the bottom, it gets better because it tells you, things you'll be learning. They're literally not even going over the nursing material. At this point, you should know the nursing material, or most of it. Yeah. So their focus is on test-taking strategies. I never received that. And I wish I had, because that probably would have made all the difference. Avoid choosing answer options with absolutes. If two answer choices are opposites, one of them is probably the answer. Like, this would have helped me so much. And it's just like crazy that something so stupid like this, such an easy thing to relay to somebody, wasn't. And I was sitting there at a computer all day, going home or sitting in the library, thinking I needed to review more material, which you can always learn more material, right? That doesn't hurt. But taking a UWorld trial, taking one practice exam, and thinking that was going to help a student like me pass, like, that's just sad. Like, that's just sad. Questions this week. I'm going to do one because it's a long one. Crystal says, aren't the exit exam and Nclex equal? They're both broad and you don't necessarily get a study guide for it. Aren't they the same? What's the difference between taking an exit exam and Nclex? They're both broad exams. You don't know what's going to be on it. And I think this is logical for a surface response, okay? Because both are hard to study for. They're functionally the same. Difficulty isn't the distinction. Authority is. The Nclex determines licensure and exit exams predict readiness. That should be used as a tool, not the deciding factor. The Nclex is broad. That's fair. But it's also governed by the Board of Nursing, therefore equal to every test taker. Exit exams from multiple vendors that you don't know you're taking until you walk in that room aren't regulated. That's not equal to every test taker. And not including study material that's needed, says the vendor themselves, when it can also include study material beyond what you've learned, even out of your scope. How is that equal to the Nclex? I'm not going to get, RN questions for an LPN Nclex test. I think a small similarity in study experience does not create an equivalence in legal function. I think it can create a huge liability for somebody who's a C student like myself with a 2.0 GPA, probably needed an IEP, has a disability. We'll get into that later. I didn't need 4 chances. It's not what I needed. Because it was just going to reflect the same grade over and over again. So that's why I think it's important that I'm letting you guys see how the process unfolded, and we're starting at the beginning, because you need to see how decisions happen, not just the outcomes of them. Individual scores without context don't explain how the exit exams were structured, disclosed, or enforced. And I think, you know, that's why I'm focusing so much on the policy and the regulation. Here's how exit exams were structured in a way that obscures informed consent at best. Next week, we're going to get into exit exams in detail, because I feel this investigation is taking me on a bigger path than I prepared for. I was thinking I was walking on a sidewalk, but now I'm in like a whole parking lot. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. My goal was to just sit for my license, move on with my life, stop talking about this, bury it. And, but because I don't know what's going to happen, this may end up being my entire life. I may have to create a bill that ensures this doesn't happen to any more students if it happens to me and continues to happen to me. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I either need to find a way to sit for my Nclex, which anything is possible. And if I don't, then we continue. I would have loved to just be a positive alumni and experience to share with other students at the possibilities of life. And you can go through domestic violence, you could be a single mom, you could be poor, you could be like all these things. You can have a bad upbringing, and you can, whatever your struggle is, mental health, addiction, whatever. I just wanted to be a vessel that showed people you can do it. You know, they always say education is something nobody can take from you. But it turns out they can. And I just, how can I go on and say, do X, Y, Z when I don't even have that for myself? I truly just wanted to be one of those poster childs for like those videos you see online, like, or like, you know, those commercials on TV and somebody talks about their story and how XYZ helped them get here and you should do it too. Like, I just wanted to be an authentic story for people. I just feel like that would have been so beneficial, not for myself, but for the school too, having positive alumni rather than doing this. Like, what is it? What type of person does this to somebody? What type of person leaves somebody with basically nothing and then beats them down for it too? As always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you listening to me. I don't want anything from you but you being here and watching and listening and supporting me. That really helps me get through the day. So thank you, and I'll see you next week. We're going to dive in to what exit exams really are. Bye, guys.